So, in today's video, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to talk about and show multiple clips of people who happen to be part of some of these Divine Nine, aka elite organizations, known as both fraternities and sororities. And after listening to some of the footage that I'm about to show, some of it you may happen to be pretty disturbed by because I just want to inform you, for some of you who may be faint at heart, so to speak, because there's this one particular lady that was a part of a sorority, and she went into full detail about her horrific experience when she was a part of that organization, the same as that organization that she ended up both renouncing and denouncing, the same sorority. And for some of you who may not know the difference between fraternities and sororities, fraternities are secret slash elite slash divine nine organizations on behalf of males, what they join. Whereas on the other hand, sororities are usually for females. And I also wanted to touch base and give more insight on why I feel like it's just a waste of time to join these organizations, although several people join these organizations due to the popularity factor. In other words, due to how they feel like they aren't important or can't be fully accepted by anybody unless they were to become part of these organizations, and due to the also the simple fact of how they feel like that's the only way, for the most part, they could become more successful in life, career wise, that is. Because little did I know, and I kept on wondering prior to being told this by a former coworker, why people decide to join those types of organizations usually. And she informed me, due to how anytime you may go to college and whatever you may plan on going for, and you may join these either one of these kind of organizations, whether you may be either a man trying to become part of a fraternity or a woman trying to become part of a sorority. Once you were to graduate college, either one of your brothers, frat brothers, or sorority sisters could look out for you in order to be able to find the exact kind of career that you may have went to college for without it being such a hassle or such a hardship. Although nowadays, when platforms such as LinkedIn, we really shouldn't have any use of wanting to join those kind of organizations to start with. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. Anyways, and on that note, I'm going to show you once again several clips of different people who ended up pledging to join these kinds of organizations. Once again, these quote unquote elite organizations slash chapters, you can also call them, whatever you would like to classify them as. And all of these clips will be brought to you on behalf of TikTok. Oh, and by the way, for some of you who may not be aware of what hazing is pertaining to, just read more details of the Caleb Wilson death. And my condolences go out to his family because he ended up dying tragically as a result of him trying to pledge for the fraternal organization. I believe it's called Omega Psi Phi. Some of you may also know them as the Q Dogs. And in a nutshell, for some of you who may not be aware of that story, which is a very recent story, because he passed away a month ago. and he happened to be a student, not just a student, but he happened to play in a band of Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which happens to be an HBCU. While being in the process of pledging for this organization, Omega Psi Phi, he happened to be taken to the hospital by some of his quote unquote brothers as a part of the organization. He was trying to pledge and join the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, aka Q Dogs, only for them to take him to the hospital, dump his body, believe it or not, and claim that he was injured in a basketball game, only for hospital staff to investigate and find out that he was brutally beaten to death. I mean, how low can some people be? How low down and dirty could some people be? Anyways, let me share my screen.
So, in October of 2001, I pledged to become a member of Zeta Phi Beta
Let me
sorority.
hold on. Let me adjust my
I
volume.
was very excited about it. My mom is also a Zeta. My dad is a Sigma, member of Phi Beta Sigma, which is the brother fraternity to the sorority. My line name was chosen to be Blueprint because I was what they call legacy. I was very excited. I was very excited that my parents were excited. I was excited to be a part of something my parents were a part of. But there was one problem. Up until the point that I actually got officially initiated into the sorority, I felt like something was off. I felt like, I just felt like it wasn't right. The day of my initiation ceremony, I knew something was off. But I figured since I was already here, I'm already in the middle of it, I'm going to go ahead and go through with it. And it's probably just nerves. I'm probably just nervous. And, I've never done anything like this before. Brushed it off. Well, for the years following from 2001 up until October of 2006, I was very uncomfortable about the sorority. There were so many things that stood out to me, so many things that didn't feel right, but I didn't have the words to put to it. Fast forward to 2006, in October, I walked into a church during a deliverance service at that. And during that service, I heard God very clearly speak to me and tell me to come out of the sorority. I didn't understand it at the time. He didn't give me any more information. He told me to come out. That was all there is to it. I obeyed though, even though I didn't have a lot of information. I obeyed. I didn't know at the time that I needed to renounce the sororities. What I did is I got rid of all my paraphernalia, every t-shirt, every book, pins, whatever had the name of the sorority or the initials of the sorority on it. I got rid of it. Found out a few years later why. Because I had been initiated into witchcraft, I had become an active participant in idolatry. It's a big deal to God. Went into it in ignorance, but that still did not let me off the hook for the consequences. I'm going to be talking more about this on my pages in the coming days and weeks. Make sure y'all stay tuned so you can hear my story of why I renounced Zeta Phi Beta sorority.
This is a really good question, but I honestly don't know how I want to answer because I feel like this is not necessarily a conversation for TikTok, but maybe it is a conversation for TikTok. The issue is that I feel like you have to have a certain understanding of spiritual, like the spiritual realm, to really have a good, open, and honest conversation about what open doors were present, and understanding of like how like the demonic realm works. But for me, it was sexual immorality, sexual sin, and then also related to like alcoholism and like drinking and all of this stuff. There's so much deep stuff. And everybody and their mama gonna say, like, oh no, that had nothing to do with this organization. Okay, that's what y'all think. But y'all wondering why it's the same people going through the same old stuff.
So now I'm in college and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. My mother was in a sorority when she went to college, because both of my parents went to college. So I grew up in a very educated home as well. But I now start to pursue a sorority, and I start to try to pursue my identity. So now my identity is in, oh, I'm going to be freshman class president. Oh, I'm popular on campus. Everybody wants me to be a part of their group. And now I want to pursue this sorority. And so I end up getting in this sorority, and we end up going through horrible rituals. And these are rituals that I also did to other people, whether it would be slapping, beating, eating dog food, paddling, every sort of demeaning thing that you can imagine, we went through, as opposed to kneeling down before altars, taking oaths to our final judgment, this false god, on the shield, on the crest, like.
Now, Melissa, did you have any idea that what you were doing was unto false gods or anything like that? Or was this just normal? Like, did you have any of these concerns that you have now?
It was totally normal because my mother was in a sorority, my aunt was in a sorority, my brother was in a fraternity, my grandfather on my mother's side was a Mason, Shriner. So this thing was introduced in my family. I was groomed. I was, as a baby, wearing Future of the sorority, Future t-shirts, like that I would be this. So I was groomed into this. Every last one of my mother's friends were a part of the sorority. So I knew I actually picked the college based upon them having that
Wow.
sorority. So I just knew that this was something I wanted to do. But the deceitful thing about sororities and fraternities, because they are secret societies, is that on the surface, you see that they do community service. You see that they're college educated women. You see that the founders were a part of like a women's suffrage march. You see all these wonderful things, but you do not know until you get in and you're chosen what you're going to do. And the deception when you get into a sorority is they don't give you a manual so you know what you're about to do that evening. You walk in blindly to every last one of the rituals or the classes that you're going to do. And that's when you see that you're doing witchcraft. But it's not, you don't know that. And I was very blind. I never had a relationship with Jesus, did not step foot in a church. So I was doubly blind on any of this being demonic. As a matter of fact, I wasn't even going to go to one of the rituals because they do the rituals in a church. And because I didn't believe in church, I wasn't even going to go to that. This is how deceived I was. And so you look at these things that you're going through, like it's making you tough, it's making you strong. There's nothing, and they're building you up. But they also are killing a lot of individuality, and they're indoctrinating you into the sorority. So it's like I go from one cult to another one. Not only did those things happened to me while crossing over into the sorority, I also did it to other people that are brought over in the sorority. Even worse, there is something that really shifted and changed once I crossed over into the sorority. And this is what leads me down a path of a lot of sexual immorality.
So, Melissa, tell me a little bit about that. You're in the sorority, you begin to see some of these things popping up. What are some of the things that you found yourself really struggling with?
Yes. So if I was self-righteous before, the second that I became in that sorority, I was extremely self-righteous. We're taught to have pride in the sorority. We are taught that we're popular. We now have women that are like following around us that just want to be a part of the sorority. So you're bullying them, you're hazing them. You have this superiority complex, this complex that you are in some way, shape, or form like a god, they want what you have. And so now you're going to manipulate them and use them and make them run errands for you and make them do all these things. So something really shifted in my bully personality. If I wasn't a bully before, I became even more of a mean girl, a bully afterwards. But I now started to manipulate young girls the same way that this thing happened to me when I was younger, and manipulated them to make it seem like they were doing this for a good cause. This was honor. This was respect. And meanwhile, I was doing nothing but taking advantage of them. Also, something happened to me in regards to sexual immorality. The second that I took that covenant unto the false god, which was Minerva, by the way, that's the false god that's over the sorority, that we would wear it over our crest. We would even say songs that all my peace, my love, my happiness, I give it to the sorority. Everything was about worship to this sorority. And so after afterwards, I ended up being in different relationships, but the relationships would always end because I was indoctrinated that I don't ever want to get married. And on top of that, I never want to have kids. So this led me down a path of extreme sexual immorality where I was literally sleeping with a lot of people. I didn't care. I was very numb. And this also led me to my senior year in college to get pregnant. And then I ended up getting pregnant. And this was by a guy at the time who I was talking to, but we weren't in a relationship. And I was like, there's no way that I can have this child because I was indoctrinated that my body, my choice. And why would I bring a child into this situation where I'm not even with the dad and I'm not going to be a single mom, and just total selfishness. And so I ended up having an abortion. And I never forget the day that I drove to the clinic. Literally, as I was driving to the clinic before pulling in, I saw Christians standing outside with signs and saying, please don't go in there, and begging and pleading not to go in there. But my will, my human will was, I was going to have this abortion. There was no way that I was going to bring a kid into this because my ego, my image, that meant more to me than anything. And I just remember sitting on the table before about to have the abortion, and they show you the sonogram of the baby and still making a decision. It was like God was trying to give me grace, and I still made the decision to kill the child. And I remember sitting and my feet are in the stirrups, and they did this thing called a twilight sedation back in the day, because this was around 2009. And they did this thing called a twilight sedation, and that means you're half asleep and half awake. And I felt the entire procedure. Then afterwards, after they just like suck the child out, they put you in this room, and it's called a recovery room, and it's just a bunch of women, and everybody is just depressed. And something changed in me after that too. I just became so cold, so cold. Something changed in my spirit. Something happened to me. Something left me that day that I did that. And my life just went on this spiral.
Now, I'm very sorry to hear what this beautiful sister had to go through as a result of her trying to pledge the organization that she used to be a part of. And this is the clip right here that you just heard. This is the exact clip I was referring to when I stated how one of the clips I plan on showing you, some of you may find pretty disturbing, and how it would not be for the faint of heart, so to speak. And I thought about this. In order to join these, some people may call them boule organizations, boule slash divine nine slash elite organizations. So body likes to either for a fraternity for the males or a sorority for the females, and you have to go through such horrendous consequences or horrific consequences while pledging for these organizations, specifically how you have to bend over. I don't know if it's pertaining to joining all of them, maybe all of them, perhaps some of them. Anyways, for joining or in order to join these kinds of organizations, how you have to face having to get a paddle hit on your rear end multiple times until the paddle breaks while you bend all the way over frontward. I thought about this. How is that any much different than what us as black people had to go through way back during the slavery era, when we had to face so many days, months, weeks, hours, minutes, seconds of being tragically or brutally beaten, abused, having to be called the N word in the process while doing so by our slave masters, and being demeaned I mean, how is that even different in order to join these kinds of black fraternities, sororities, and having to face being brutally beaten by people who are your very own race just to be able to be more popular in society, more successful, be more sort of a higher up in society. And I don't blame people at all for either renouncing or denouncing any of these kinds of organizations due to the simple fact of what all you have to go through in order to join these kinds of organizations, the hazing, due to the hazing aspect, which several people have died while pledging these organizations as a result of so many horror stories when it came to having to be hazed just to be able to become part of these elite slash boule slash divine nine organizations. Anyways,
Because I had taken an oath, because I had bent my knee to a God that wasn't him, it gave these demons legal right to harass, to steal, the poverty mentality. No matter how hard I worked, it's a pretty smart guy. I was like, I couldn't land a good job to support myself. I see with my children, there were so many things. So I was like, why am I struggling so bad? And the Lord would tell me, he said, because you allowed this to happen. You're sacrificing a lot of things that the Lord has for you in your future for a present relationship that won't amount to what the Lord has to you. Uh, what I would tell me is that love you enough to do your homework, value your relationship with yourself, value your relationship with the Lord, so you may understand what you're trading off is not worth what you're getting.
by the way, I want to give a special shout out to Lala Jenkins because Lala Jenkins happens to also be a fellow content creator who has so many videos on YouTube. By the way, I plan on having her link to her YouTube channel in the description box because she has so many videos explaining why these kinds of organizations, some people call them also secret societies slash secret organizations, are demonic. And she has done several interviews with people who were part of these organizations, only to be no longer part of these organizations, only to end up um, either denouncing them or renouncing them, and going into detail about all the things they had to go through as far as the hazing process, all the horror stories they had to share with her as a part of the hazing process. So it should be one more video to show. At least I thought it was one more video to show. I guess not. Anyways, make sure, like always, you like, you share, you comment, last not least, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I'm out.